Welcome back. So for this lesson, we're going to look at code blocks and nested if statements. For the code blocks basically means if you have a condition that is true or false, how many lines of code or how many statements can be included within that branch, okay? All right, so let's do an example. So let's say we have an int, just type here, int age, and we're going to ask the user to enter the age of someone. And then we're going to do a few things if they're within a certain range of years, right? And then we will see what happens if you want to refine, okay, the question even further, and that's going to lead us to nested if statements. Okay. All right, well, let's do that. Let's say we ask the user, enter your age. Okay? And let's do scanf %d and %age, since that is our variable. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is make sure you're an adult. So over 18, then we can do certain things. All right. So if, okay, age is greater than 18, or maybe equals to 18 is fine, greater or equal to 18, so that means right on your birthday, then we could say printf, you're an adult, /n. Okay. Let's just see how this behaves. So let me save this file. Let me just copy this part here, which is the file name. And I am going to save it as a .c file. So I paste it here, and make sure you save this as a .c file and save. Now let's compile this and run. Okay. And let's say we entered 15, right? So if you entered 15, nothing's going to happen. Press any key to continue. If you enter 18 or higher, you will get, so let's say I put in 18, you're an adult. Or if you enter something higher than that, so let's run it again. And let's enter an age of 22, same thing, you're an adult. All right, so this is a basic expression, logical expression here, that is true. If age is greater or equal to 18, then this will be printed. Now let's suppose we want to give you a present because you're an adult, right? And we would type something like this, printf, you can have this car, right? Just because you're an adult, right? So, right, now, that doesn't mean you can't have a car at 16. It all depends where you live. That could happen. And that was the intent. So notice what I did here. And I made a mistake on purpose. So you're an adult, fine. And then you would think, because you've tabbed it, that this block of code here belongs to the true part of this if statement. Well, let's go ahead and run it. So compile and run. And yeah, let's say we're 23, right? So no problem. Everything looks good on the surface. You're an adult. You can have this car. So let me just type here. You can have this car. Okay. All right. So compile and run again, just to make sure. And let's do 22, right? So no problem. You're an adult. You can have this car. Now let's say you're 16. And let's run this. And I want you to pay attention to what's going on. So if I put 16, it didn't print you're an adult. However, it did print you can have this car. So the statement, the printf statement where you can have this car, does not belong to the if statement. So you're going to have to create some sort of a syntax to create a block where these two lines here, you're an adult and you can have this car, belong logically to the condition where indeed age is greater than or equal to 18. So to do this, you create what we call curly braces. You open a curly brace and you close the curly brace. This here creates a block of code. Okay, so now this is what we call the true block of this if statement. let's go ahead, compile and execute this. So let me just click here, compile and run. Okay. Yeah, so let's go ahead and put a 20. So that was not a problem. You're an adult. You can have this car. Now let's go ahead and put 12. We simply need to run. And let's put 12 and notice nothing happens. And that is better. We have better control over the flow of this program because we delineated the starting part and the ending part of the block associated to the true part of the if statement. Okay? So can we do the same thing with the else? Right? So yeah, so you could do something. Let's say this statement here, else, printf. You can have this bicycle. Okay? Well, let's see what happens here again. So compile and run. And let's say you're 15. It will skip the true part of this, and it will say you can have this bicycle. Now, what if you wanted to, anytime you're below 5, give them a tricycle instead of a bicycle? Right? So this is what you want to do. You want to write a program that offers a car over 18, a bicycle between 18 and 5, right? Less than 18 and 5. So what do you do? Okay? So here's what you do. You're going to write another if statement right below this, but it's going to be another line of code. So could I put a curly brace here and curly brace here, and this will not change the meaning of what we just did originally? Yeah, this shouldn't be a problem. So compile and run. Watch this. Okay, so these curly braces are optional if you simply have a single statement. So keep that in your notes. Now let's say we have 12, and it will work just fine. But remember I told you I'm going to do a nested if statement to refine things a little better. So maybe here I'll have an if statement, if, okay, age is greater than, well, we're going to assume that it is greater than 0 and or 1. When can you have a tricycle? Maybe 2. There you go. And age is less or equal to 5. You can have a tricycle. So printf. You can start with a tricycle /n. Else, guess what you're going to have? You're going to have a bicycle. Okay. Now remember, this if statement, the whole block here, is one line of code. So these two curly braces actually are optional, but I'm just putting them in here so you understand that all of this is one block. It's just happened that this block is a single line. It's a complete if-else statement within the else of the first if statement. Hence, this highlighted area is called a nested if statement. Now, a nested if statement could be under the true part or the false part, as is in this case. Now, let's see how this behaves. Let's see how this works. Compile and run. Okay. And let's say you're actually 4 years old. And you can see it filters down to where you need to be. Remember, between 2 and 5, you're going to have a tricycle. Let's say you're 1 year old. Let's see what happens. So run. And we don't want to give you anything, so we're not going to say anything. It made a mistake. So let's see what the issue is. Do you see the logical error here? You can have this bicycle even though you're an age of 1. So this logically is wrong. Even though we saw the intent, right? So we're going to inverse this a little bit. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this one here, right? We know this will work just fine for between 2 and 5. And how about let me just, whatever I deleted, let me just undo, edit, undo, edit, undo, right? And let's do another if statement here. So let's do another if statement. If age is greater than 5, then do this. Now this will work. Now you have 2 lines of code. And only one of them will actually be true anyway. So, all right, so the only time you're going to be at age greater than 5, but you're going to be under less than 18, right? Or so definitely under 18 to be here. So let's see how this logic works. So compile and run. And let's do the example of 1 again. And notice nothing happens. Now let's go ahead and run it again. And let's do enter your age, and let's make the age 4. You could start with this tricycle because you're between 2 and 5. Let's go ahead and try to get into a bicycle. So let's run it. And we know we can get a bicycle if you're about 10 years old, right? So no problem. You can have this bicycle. Okay, so notice now I have 2 nested if statement within this else, but each one now is a separate, complete statement. Now, like this one, it does not have an else. So it in itself is a single line. This is now why it's important to have these curly braces. Now, let's suppose you forgot and didn't put the curly brace, right? Let's make that on purpose. Then this if statement here will belong to the else. This one here does not belong to the else. And let's see what happens here. And let's compile and run. And I just notice I have no syntax error. Even though logically I wanted to have 2 lines of code in that block. But let's see what the logical problem is going to happen here. Now let's suppose you're actually 19, right? So we know the if statement is true, age is greater or equal to 18. The else part is not going to run, but except for one. Notice here, you're an adult, you can have this car, and you can have this bicycle, which means the highlighted area below that actually is true because it does not belong to the else part of the if statement, the first one, or the parent. It's a totally separate if statement. So it's evaluating on its own. Even though it's indented, that does not mean anything. It's simply a separate if statement. And it's looking at, okay, well, you're 19, then you're greater than 5. Guess what? You're going to get a bicycle. Well, wait a minute. Didn't I offer you a car already? Yeah, you see, this is what happens when you don't pay attention to blocking some areas to drive the logic forward as to exactly what you want or you intend to do. Okay, so code could look correct on the surface, but the missing a few curly braces could make a major difference in the interpretation or the execution of your program. So let's put a curly brace here to keep the intent for what it is. So it's very important when you start writing a program that you listen and write carefully the program requirements and then decide where certain things will belong, and that's where the curly braces will delineate certain blocks that will execute under certain conditions. Now, these 2 lines will only execute if you're below 18. Now it's a matter of refinement. Which of the 2 will execute, right? So if you're 1 year old, right, none of these are true, so nothing will happen. If you're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, then only the highlighted one will run. If you're greater than 5, then this will run. But remember, it will be greater than 5, but less than 18, because the only reason you're here is because this condition was false. Okay? All right, so can we have nested within nested within nested? Indeed. And that's going to come with the examples coming up in front of us. So stay tuned for that.